Hey, welcome to Bears Banter. My name is Bernard Muhammad. Tonight on the broadcast, sitting in for Guy Moore tonight is Christian Jones. Next to him is Keith Flournoy. Right below him is Jay Beasley. Next to him is Mike Alton. And next to him is community activist, Brother Talib Muhammad. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, bro.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, hey, man, last week, man, I was looking at the program again, and, man, that was a very good conversation we had last week. So tonight we coming back with part 2, which is going to be the hiring practices for Black coaches, Black GMs, and Black referees. And you know, and it's fitting that this Black History Month, and what we are also going to dive in tonight is, ironically, on February 1st, Brian Flores actually filed his lawsuit in reference to suing the NFL and a couple of NFL teams, which we would dive into a little bit more. But anyway, with that said, I'd like to thank everybody who's watching us tonight on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch TV. And hey, let's start off with the Super Bowl. I know that's not the topic tonight, but you know that's what all this is about. Eventually, on Bears Banter, we get to the Super Bowl and discuss the Super Bowl. Hey, anybody have any favorites tonight or anything they want to say before we kind of jump into Super Bowl?
Not really.
Okay.
We can just really jump right into it as far as Super Bowl, as far as I'm concerned, because let's get that over with. And the Bears ain't in it, so let's just get that over with.
Right.
Let's talk about the black folks. Let's talk about the black folks.
Now, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl as far as the entertainment. It's Black history as well. First time we're actually going to start focusing on hip-hop and giving that genre of music its due. So I'm looking forward to this.
And also, if you want to throw it in there, Ron Tobert is refereeing the Super Bowl this year, who's actually African American. So I guess we can put that in there.
Man, I'm just hoping that Mary J. Blige has a wardrobe malfunction like Janet Jackson. That's what I'm hoping for.
Hey, she's actually doing the show. She's actually doing the halftime show for free. She's the only one that's not getting paid to do the halftime show.
Well, give me a wardrobe malfunction for free then. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like to say also we're going to be missing Tammy tonight, but Tammy and Guy will both be back next week for part 3. But Tammy, enjoy yourself, and Guy, I know you're taking care of some business. As far as the Super Bowl, when I look at this game, I've been trying to psych myself up to get excited. I'm still not excited about it, but it is what it is at this point. From looking at it, to me, these teams are kind of evenly matched from what I see, but I do think the advantage is going to be in the trenches of the defensive pass rush, and the amount of sacks that the Bengals do give up, I believe is going to slant in the favor of the Rams. So in this game, I'm going to pick the Rams in this game, and I'm going to pick a high-scoring game, 31-28, with the Rams coming out victorious. Who's up next?
Well, I'll go.
I'll keep going.
Oh, go ahead, Brother Salih.
I'm going to stay with the Midwest. I'm going to go with Cincinnati. Von Miller said something real interesting when he was talking about the game. He said that he has a great amount of respect for Joe Burrow. He really saw him as a Tom Brady type, and that's interesting. So I'm gonna go with the Bengals, stay with the Midwest, and I think it'll be a moderately score game, like 27-24 in that area right there. But I think the Bengals are, Matt Stafford can be rattled real quick. So they rattled him, it's over. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't think on paper there's no way that Cincinnati should even be in this game, let alone able to compete against the Rams. But it's just something about, that young guy's swagger, a Heisman Trophy winner, national championship. Now, within 4 years, try to cap that off with a Super Bowl victory. It seems like that story's too good. So I'm going to have to go with Cincinnati. They haven't won championship before. They're one of the few teams in the NFL that has not been a Super Bowl victor. So I'm going with Cincinnati this time to win. And my score is going to be Cincinnati 2, the Rams nothing.
Hey, you've been consistent playing since about week 5. So that's all you can ask for is consistency.
There you go.
We have one for the Rams and 2 for the Bengals.
I'm actually pulling for the Bengals as well. Normally I root for I'm an NFC guy, so I normally root for the NFC unless the Packers are in the Super Bowl, of course. But I just like their story, man, and it's one of those things where I like the story because in 2019 they was 2-14, in 2020 they was 4-12, and this year they're going to the Super Bowl. So I've been riding them all. I've been riding them the entire playoffs. So I'm going to stay with them. I'm just hoping that that the offensive line can protect Burrow, even though the Titans, I believe, had 9 sacks against them in that game and in that playoff game, and they still wind up being victorious. So I'm pulling for the young guy. I'm pulling for Jamar Chase. Y'all know I'm a wide receiver guy. I love wide receivers. So I'm pulling for Cincinnati, and I'm looking for it to be actually a pretty high-scoring game as well. And I'm going 38-31 Cincinnati.
Okay, 38-31. Hey, for those who just tuned in, I know you tuned in and you saw that the program is about the hiring practices of the NFL, and that is what the show is about. But we just briefly just giving our predictions on the Super Bowl since it's this coming weekend. And, I think about in the 1980s, the Bengals was one of my favorite teams because I just used to love orange, right? It wasn't because they was winning. I just love orange as a child. And I should say the 80s, it was really more of like the late 70s. And man, my favorite receiver was Isaac Curtis, and I think it's just because he had that big afro, right? And I was like, man, Isaac Curtis is my guy. Him and Kenny Anderson. Hey, but anyway, we got Mike and Christian. Who y'all have in this game? Who want to go up first next?
Oh, I'll go.
Okay.
All right. So, you talking about back in the day when Kenny Anderson and Chris Collinsworth. I mean,
Collinsworth. Wow.
Right. Yeah, that's a blast from the past. He's still on the NFL channel, like an analyst or whatever, giving his perspectives from back in the '60s. But man, when you look at this game on paper, the Rams have gone out and basically purchased a Super Bowl.
Yep.
With Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, OBJ, they came in and got a whole bunch of guys to surround themselves. So if I really don't have a dog in this fight, I can't care less. As my boy would say, my white Jesus is not playing tomorrow. I mean on Sunday, so I really don't care. But I think the Rams may pull this out. I'm just hoping for a better Super Bowl than the last time they played against New England. I almost fell asleep at halftime because that game was terrible. But I'm going with the Rams. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I say 34-28 in favor of the Rams.
Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3 Rams and 2 Bengals. Okay, Christian.
I'm gonna go with the same score as Coach Mike. I just think that nobody's gonna be able to contain Donald. 99. It's gonna be a long night for Burrow. It's kind of hard to double team a D tackle anyway, so I think he's gonna get about a good 4 sacks. So I'm gonna go
4. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just see him get 4.
Okay.
He a beast.
So the panel is split 3-3 for which team they select. So anyway,
he predicted a Super Bowl record too, 4 sacks.
We had to see that.
I think the record, but Keith, I think the record is 4.5 for one player. I think it's 4.5. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 4.5 for one player.
Didn't Nagy beat the Bengals? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So they are beatable.
I see him getting it though. I mean, you can't. You're not gonna double team him. From the guard and center position the whole night. That's gonna leave so many open holes for an A-gap blitz with the linebackers. You're not going to just do that. He going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunity, and he going to win. So I see him getting about 4.
Okay.
Okay.
He get 4. He may end up being the MVP.
Well, that's the thing that everybody's saying right now is they already predicted Aaron Donald to be the MVP of the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. That's why they play the game. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's all you can say.
Hey, you might mess around. He get 4 sacks and they still lose. I mean,
well, like I said,
Burrow get sacked 9 times the last game and win.
Like I said, he got sacked 9 times against the Titans in the divisional championship.
But that was Ryan Tannehill, though.
I mean,
hey, Matthew Stafford wants to throw you the ball too, though.
Listen.
Tannehill don't play defense, though.
Wait, here's your chances with Stafford than Tannehill.
It's not going to come down to Aaron Donald. It's not going to be Von Miller. History has shown that if you have a short white wide receiver, you can win the Super Bowl. That's all that matters. We talking about all this other stuff. Short white wide receivers win the Super Bowl. That's all.
Okay.
Right? Who has one of those?
Let's get to the meat of it now. What we're here tonight to talk about. Hey, I want to do I was looking at the broadcast, and the interesting about the broadcast and you in this live broadcast, sometimes you say things and you kind of misspeak, and you don't really realize it while you're talking, and then to go back and play it. And I did realize in the broadcast, I actually said his name was Fitzgerald. Referred to Fritz Pollard. His name was Frederick. And
Frederick Douglass.
Right.
Frederick Douglass Pollard. And I didn't realize and then I actually referred to him as the first black manager, but I meant the first black coach and not manager. I don't even know if they had managers at the inception of the NFL. But with that said, we're talking about racism in the NFL and the hiring practices of the NFL with coaches, GMs. And one interesting thing with that is we just went through a hiring cycle again. I believe there was 9 vacancies. 9 vacancies. And when you came out of these right before you concluded this vacancy, up to that point, there was no black coaches hired at that point until Brian Flores filed his lawsuit. Now, what we don't know is, did it influence the Houston Texans to hire Lovie Smith? We really don't know, but to me, it does look suspicious. And I like Lovie, and it has nothing to do with Lovie's credentials. But the finalists, for what I understand at that point, was Josh McCown and Brian Flores were the 2 finalists that you were hearing about in the press. Lovie came out of nowhere after this lawsuit was filed, which made it look a little suspicious, because I believe they were about to hire Josh McCown, who has not even coached Pop Warner football, and that would really be a kick in the face to all the guys, no matter what their race is, but particularly the black coaches that have cut their teeth being assistants. Some of them actually doing jobs for free, going to the college level, working their way up to all of a sudden award a guy that just retired from the NFL in the recent years. Never was, there was a mediocre player. And not even a good quarterback coach. And you
journeyman
coach, right? Just a journeyman. And that's what it appeared. And they went and hired Lovie, who was already on the staff, as assistant. He was assistant head coach and the D coordinator. Do y'all think this influenced that particular hire?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because they were gonna hire Josh McCown, because once Brian Flores, once he filed his lawsuit, they said he was a finalist, but he wasn't getting that job, and it's unfortunate. I don't think Brian Flores will ever get another head coaching job in the NFL, but he's putting himself out there so the people behind him can possibly actually get hired. But the Texans were actually going to hire Josh McCown, and that would have been, like you said, a slap in the face to not only the black coaches but even white coaches for this guy to actually get a head coaching job who has never. He was a quarterback coach in high school a couple of years ago. He's never coached on the college level. So for them to actually consider or even get this guy an interview to be a head coach in the NFL is really like a slap in the face.
Okay. I lost my screen.
It is, and let me chime in on that tip. You know, one of the things we have to continue to keep into perspective is that we're not living in a post-racial society. We're living in a racial society. We're living in a society where we've been told that race is this social construct, but we know that there are physiological, genealogical differences between races. And so it's not a construct. There are certain things about it that are constructs. Like one is better than the other one based upon intellect, saying that, that you have to be, we've always been told we got to be 10 times better. And even that doesn't equate because you're dealing with a Lovie Smith who really, other than with his small stint with Tampa, had a successful run with Chicago. Overall, he's the second winningest coach in the history of Chicago, or something like that, second or third. So we're talking about someone who did get success, who should have had opportunities to help go deeper into that level of success. It should have even been, to be honest with you, he should have been a head coach. If you're going to hire a guy for 1 year that had no previous head coaching experience, then why wasn't Lovey that guy? So you bring in a guy, who was a brother too, they lost, and 1 year, without their quarterback, he gets fired, and then you don't immediately, elevate Lovey, and but all of a sudden you do, that wouldn't make any sense. So, the Brian Flores thing had an impact because just like George Floyd had an impact on Juneteenth becoming a holiday, so it take a large, visible tragedy type thing to make people say, well, just to deflate this. It's funny how folks know how to de-escalate the wrong stuff.
Right.
And then we fall into the category like everything is okay because, we got 1.5 black coaches now out of the 9 openings. And we had candidates like Eric Bieniemy, Todd Boyles, all these great candidates that have been winning with the teams, the situation that they're in. And then it comes to Josh McCowney, who wasn't even him nor his brother were good quarterbacks. Not in the NFL. And then yet you get an opportunity above some of these great candidates. I mean, being 10 times better still ain't good enough in that environment. But hey, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Hey, Mike, Christian, any of y'all want to make a comment on that as far as the move that the Texans made in reference to this?
It looks like Plank is ready up there.
I'm trying to be sitting on my hands, but there's a couple things that I want to kind of highlight about this. First of all, you're right to that point. They were going to go ahead and the Texans were going to hire McCown because they figured they can do whatever they wanted to do, and the only reason they pulled back because they had to appease all of the uproar that was starting to happen because it was pretty clear that 9 candidates and you got 0 that actually were able to get offered a job. Something's wrong with the math, especially when you're talking about 70 to 75% of the players in the NFL are black, and all of a sudden, when you go for a head coaching position, nobody is qualified. So they actually just recycled Lovey like they do to many of the white coaches. You see them getting second, third, fourth times. This is the first time I've seen a black coach go through that cycle. As far as I'm concerned, what they've done is they've tried to make a martyr out of Brian Flores, the same way that they did Colin Kaepernick. I've heard this week a couple times people say that they are going to Kaepernick him. So he's actually done everything that he could. So he's the one that's kind of falling on the sword. And if you look at it, the Kaepernicks, the Brian Flores, the Kurt Floods, those are the guys that make a stand on principle. And at the end of the result, they're not the ones that actually benefit from that stand that they made. So I hope that Brian Flores does get a chance. in the NFL. If he doesn't, he should still, at the very least, be a qualified candidate for a major job coaching at a college. So I don't want to, throw dirt on his career yet, but I don't see him getting a position in the NFL as a head coach anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that it's interesting when you deal with black candidates because they set this unforeseen matrix and we achieve the finish line, but then they stretch it and say, no, you got a quarter mile more to run. And so when that occurs, you look at the candidates that were in the candidate pool even before Lovey, all of them have reached a certain level of greatness within their particular area. I posted on Facebook maybe about a week or two ago that all 6 candidates have won a Super Bowl. Every last one of them won a Super Bowl as an assistant coach. And it really deems the term of what are you looking for out of an assistant coach. But to go back to what Nutty's point, Roger Goodell, when he first hit the NFL, I was like, this dude is out of control. He's just trying to be a control freak, saying this and that. But he came out with a letter that he sent to all NFL teams stating that the equality and the equity of our hiring practices have failed the NFL. And that's very, very interesting coming from a guy who's not a black guy, coming from a white guy saying that he's asking the question of why these guys are not getting hired. And he's come out with the NFL is now going to investigate the hiring practices based off of Brian Flores's lawsuit. And he said he welcomes the lawsuit. So that I find that very interesting. And even with Lovey, there's no way I would have even took that job. But go ahead.
Okay, Christian, did you have comments on?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Coach Mike said, I actually feel bad for Coach Smith. And reason why I'm saying that is because, I mean, it's a terrible job. And then you interview me after so many people who wouldn't even qualify for a job. And then you just say, here's a job. You know, they're not even looking at, what he's done in the past. And he has to take the job because he wants to coach. And if you coach before, you know that that's in you and you just want to just coach because that's just your thing. That's what you do. It's still in you. And he has to take a terrible job, no talent. And 9 times out of 10, when the talent gets to the team, he's not going to even be around to even reap the benefits. So it's just going to be another David Culley situation to where you get a job and you're only there for a year. And that's just tough. Like that has to change. All black coaches get terrible jobs and then they never get another opportunity and ever again. Or you gotta be so excellent at what you do to keep your job. That's the only reason why Mike Tomlin is around, because he never had a losing season. Let him have one losing season. It's gonna be like this man's never won.
Call it for his hand. Yep.
Well, it all depends. I mean, we talk about a franchise though, because like I say, I was born in 1969, and one thing about the Steelers, they've had 3 coaches in my lifetime. So even though Mike Tomlin is black, he ain't never had a losing season. But the Steelers ain't really quick to fire no coach just because
it might be the culture, but I'm talking about people. So the team might be consistent in that, but as people, as a human beings, we're gonna look at that and be like, oh no, he need to get fired.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a good point, Christian, because the last 2 or 3 seasons, there have been fans calling for his firing in the middle of a season, right? And
Right.
He has been able to turn it around and have a winning record. And I believe he's made the playoff, I think, almost pretty much his whole time he's been coaching. He might have missed it here and there, but I know the last 3 years or so, if they kind of start off slow and there's been like this call. But we wanted those who are watching us, please hit the subscribe button. And also I want if Brother Talib could actually give a definition of racism. But even though we're talking about the NFL, this is not just exclusively for the NFL. You see the same behavior in a lot of corporate jobs.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's the same. And you know what? And some people have been done like Lovie Smith in a way where they're sitting there as like Brother Talib mentioned last week, a natural progression, right? You know, you're a player, then maybe you want to be a coach, right? Then after coach, maybe you want to be a GM, right? That's a progression of your job qualities. And some of us have experienced that in corporate jobs where we the next man up, and all of a sudden the job description changed. You know, now you know, maybe if you're in finance, you need a CPA, and the job never needed a CPA. You know, and maybe you in some other field, and now the job needs a PhD or something, or now you need a master's degree. And then they hire somebody, and you're like, man, this guy pretty dumb.
Right.
You know,
Can I say something? As a society, I don't think people really take into account on how much we question things, and that shouldn't be. Like Ryan Poles, for example, he got the job. We shouldn't have to question, okay, was this really his hire? You know what I'm saying? Because everybody that live in Chicago know that it's the Midwest South. It literally is. So much racism happen every day in Chicago. Just about the geography of where people live at. We can get into that too if we had the time. So you look at Ryan Post getting hired, and then you say, man, could he really have hired a black coach in Chicago?
Right.
And when we get to that point of now that we can say, okay, we don't have to question, we can be like, yeah, he hired who he wanted to hire, instead of having to think about like, did he hire who they wanted him to hire? And we just in that society right now, and that has to change. That has to change.
Bernard, if I may, so I wanted to sit back. Let's lay bare what the actual issue is, or at least in the case of Brian Flores. This is a Super Bowl winning.
Jackie Robinson is credited by most with breaking the.
That came up accident. Okay. There we go.
So this is a coach that was on a Super Bowl winning staff, New England, under the Belichick tree, left, got a head coaching job at the Miami Dolphins, not one of the better teams or what have you. And he got Miami to the point where they were a winning team, despite having a whole lot of mismanagement and other things that they weren't doing. So he shouldn't have been fired from the Miami Dolphins to begin with.
Yep.
Let alone now he's in a situation where he's out there without a job, and there are 9 head coaching jobs available. Everybody at the time that he got fired, his name went to the top of the list on the opportunity to get a new job. So it was almost a no-brainer that everybody was going to interview him, and he was going to be able to pick for one of those jobs. He was one of the first coaches that the Chicago Bears interviewed, and they spoke highly of him. So to fast forward that another 10 days, and this gentleman be in a position where he got 0 opportunities for a job is criminal. That's kind of my point. I just wanted to lay that out there, and let's have a conversation about the rest of this. But Brian Flores is more than capable at being able to do a job as a head coach in NFL, and he's already proven that.
Okay. Hey, brother Tyler, do you have a working definition of racism? Because I think a lot of people like to operate racism is in their minds is when they're calling you the N-word or they're calling you names. Right. They try to say they're not racist by those type of thought processes, right? And not in a certain behavior, right? Or it's systematic, right?
Exactly.
Racism. Do you have a working definition?
I wanted to get the I was looking for the official definition of racism as it is explained through Dr. Welsing, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and her mentor, Neely Fuller Jr. And for some reason, is when you're looking for something, no matter how you've highlighted it, it's not popping over. But
that's all right. We'll come back to you. So
that's the official. That's the official. But unofficially, it is the systemic approach and practices and policies as it pertains to not people of color, but as it pertains to Trying to think of the way that they've used the definition, but as it pertains to non-white people and its effect in 9 areas of people activity. And the 9 areas of people activity are our economics, entertainment, labor, law. I can list them for you. We're dealing with economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war or counter-war practices. And it is often confused with discriminatory practices. It's confused with racial epithets. It's confused with even feelings of inequity or feelings of, it is a systemic method of controlling and the misuse of power. Racism is a power word. It's not a word that can be, this is a working definition. Now, this is not what Webster says. Racism cannot go from the bottom up. That's almost like saying sexual harassment can be done from an employee. An employee cannot sexually harass his boss or her boss because they can fire them. An employee, sexual harassment comes from the top down. Racism comes from the top down. It is a control factor. It is some of the pieces, not necessarily a part of it, but some of the pieces that impact racism may come along with calling someone the N-word, may come along with like we look at Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker, he wasn't a racist. He lived in a bungalow in New York. What did he control? He could even keep the family in the house next to him from being black. But the policy that preceded that did. The policy that made the Jeffersons one of the first black families in the neighborhood was a racist policy. And it was about redlining, and it was about processes that kept black people from being in certain things. The NFL, what they're going to have to do, I know I kind of may have jumped the gun here, but what they're going to have to do if they're going to correct this ship is acknowledge that the NFL is indelibly controlled and been run by racist mentality for centuries, for decades. And the first thing, if they do that, that's going to be the beginning part of correcting it. But they'll never be able to correct if they don't admit. I mean, and maybe Roger Goodell is trying to do, maybe this is what he's trying to do. Maybe this is a real thing to say, you know what? This is deep. Maybe somebody put a book in front of him and woke his behind up and he said, hey, this is systemic. Because the mindset to say automatically that here is a man that, first of all the coaches that were interviewed for jobs, which of them have been fired from a job they just had?
Okay. Hey, now let's come back to that, and because I got something where we're gonna get on Brian Flores, but hey, let me bring this up about racism in the NFL. Let me put this on the bottom here. Okay. So let's look at some of the coaches that why did they go off the screen? Some of the coaches that we had in the NFL. This is, I put right here, we had 2003, before the Rooney Rule came in place, we had 3 black coaches in 2003. And I have in 2022, we have 3. And I'm sorry, I need to edit that and put 2 because
well, an argument can be made either way. So
put a half up there.
And the reason I'm saying that is because if he doesn't identify with being black, I can't make him identify with being black.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
His DNA does.
Right.
So this has never been about how you identify it. It's never been about how you felt inside. It's about your color, how other people perceive you as soon as they see you. People of our color and don't have the ability of hiding and trying to act like you're something which you are not.
Right.
So this whole idea of I get to choose, I want to be a white guy. I go outside right now, tell everybody I'm white. Right. Everybody gonna look at me like I'm a fool because it's clear, and that's one of the components of racism. Not to get off on another vertical, but this gentleman had the opportunity to choose because he could pass for not being black. And
I
that's
mean,
a
And up
You know,
until
just
this
remind.
point,
he wasn't the
Right.
first though.
No, he
up
was
until this
not.
point, no one's ever even said anything about this man being black. This is the first time. I think he just found out he's
Right.
black.
Right.
He didn't even know he was black.
Right.
He didn't
Right.
even know he
Go
was
through
black.
this real quick.
Hey, you know what this
Adopted in-
this
Hold on a
reminds
minute,
me
Mike.
of
Hold on, Mike.
Dave
Let me-
Chappelle
hold
show.
on, Mike, hold on a minute.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Adopted in 2003, the Rooney Rule is an NFL policy requiring every team with a head coach vacancy to interview at least one or more diverse candidates. The Rooney Rule is named after the late former Pittsburgh Steelers owner, chairman of the league diversity committee, Dan Rooney. Okay, here's the history of the Rooney Rule. This is real quick. The history of the Rooney Rule. After the 2001 season, 2 of the 3 black coaches, African-American coaches, were fired. This left the league roughly with 7% of the players who are of color and only 1 black head coach. One of those coaches who was fired at the time was Tony Dungy, and I believe the other one was Dennis Green.
Mm-hmm.
They formed, the brother who we talked about, they formed a foundation called the Fritz Paula Alliance Foundation, which is named after the first black NFL player from 1920. In response to this firing, in light of the league's poor coaching diversity track, this is straight from the Fritz Paula Foundation page. In response to the firing, in light of the league's poor coaching diversity track record, civil rights lawyer Cyrus, I think it's Myrie. I don't know if that
Myrie.
feedback. That's a feedback for somebody's mic. Johnny Cochran Jr. alleged that African American coaches were systematically disadvantaged in pursuing head coaches positions. Okay, the Rooney Rule was updated in 2020. I wonder why it was updated. I think it was related to Scott Cap, but that's my opinion. Interview at least 2 internal candidates now. Interview at least 1 minority coordinator. Interview 1 minority for general manager position. Okay, Super Bowl winners. Even though the first black head coach in the modern era was Art Shell in 1989, you have 2 black head coaches that won Super Bowls since then. You have Tony Dungy, who won it with the Colts, and you have Mike Tomlin, who won it with the Steelers. Also, you had a historical moment when Tony Dungy and the Colts faced Lovie Smith and the Bears, where 2 black head coaches faced off each other in the Super Bowl. Okay, now we got the Brian Flores lawsuit, and we'll come back to that. So, with that said, let's get back to the Rooney Rule. So, has the Rooney Rule worked?
No.
No.
Can you house on that?
I would contend that it has worked, because when we talk about the word work, we have to ask ourselves, what was the intention? And if the intention was to simply give black candidates an interview, that's worked. If the intention was to highlight that there's a disparity in hiring practices in the NFL, that's worked. Has it actually provided more jobs and more opportunities in management level when we have an NFL that still has less than 10% black management on any level higher than a coach and up? No, it has not worked. But that I don't believe that was ever its intent. I believe its intent was to do just what it is doing right now. Give a gloss over for what really is the problem. So that's when I see it has worked, but not conventionally, not in the conventional sense of what we think it should have done. No, it hasn't worked. But in the sense of what I do believe they had as an intention and what their overall goal was, it wasn't to hire more black folks. It was to shut us up.
Well,
and for a while, it did shut some people up.
Okay. You got
And see, my thing, my thing is this. Why does it have to be a rule put in place to hire a qualified candidate? To me, the Rooney Rule was put in place just saying, like, and to me, as Brother Salim said, yeah, the brothers are getting the interviews, but are they doing it genuinely?
Not at all.
For the job. The Rooney Rule says you has to interview somebody. So okay, Bernard, I'm gonna interview you. I ain't gonna hire you, but I'm gonna fulfill the rule to say that, hey, I did interview a black person for the job.
That's right.
Why does it have to be a rule put in place to hire somebody that's qualified for a job? And I'm talking about the NFL. I'm talking about in corporate America. I'm talking about at a fast food restaurant. If you're qualified, you're qualified. There should be no rule. So I'm not a real big fan of the Rooney Rule, because even down through these last few years, where just a couple of years ago when Mike McCarthy got hired in Dallas, they was talking about Jerry Jones didn't even interview an African American candidate.
He sure did.
He just surpassed the Rooney Rule, which is what if you don't own the team, that's what you do. So, that's my thing on the Rooney Rule. It shouldn't be a Rooney Rule in place to hire somebody that's qualified for the job.
I think there is a provision in the Rooney Rule that has something to do with, like, I think if you can pull a coach off your staff and something like that, I think there's some kind of provision that prevents them from not having to follow the exact components of it.
Yeah.
If it falls into that category, they don't have to interview anybody else.
Okay.
Yeah, that is true.
So, hey, as far as I come to you, Plank, and then anybody else, let me know. The interesting thing about the Rooney Rule is when we just showed the Super Bowl winning quarterback, that Mike Tomlin actually was hired because the Steelers were failing to execute the Rooney Rule. And they had for what the way the story go, they had finished up their interviews and was about to maybe pick one of the candidates, and somebody pointed out that we can't have the Rooney Rule and not have complied. It's named after our owner. And that's when Mike Tomlin's name came up. And so basically they gave him an interview just to check the box. But they said he blew them out so much in the interview that he ended up being the coach they hired, even though he was not on their list initially. But hey, Plank, what you have?
Yeah, one of the things I was sitting here thinking about while we're having this discussion is part of the reason that this system is always going to be unbalanced is that here's a question that I have for you. It's a rhetorical question. What is the owner's responsibility to the fans? And the issue is they don't have any. So you have millionaires and billionaires that own a team that don't even have a responsibility or requirement for them to make that team competitive. If they did, then that would open up more opportunities for diversity, for them to do whatever they could in order to make sure they met that competitive responsibility. Because they don't, their money's already made. They made the money from contracts, from the NFL or TV contracts. All you have to do is make it to being an NFL owner, and from there, you can basically do whatever you want. So if anybody has anything to do to rebut that, I'm more than happy to listen to it and to hear it.
Okay, Christian.
I'm in agreement with the person.
Yeah, it's not even an integral thing. Like, you're interviewing people knowing that you're not going to even hire them.
Right.
That's not even integral.
Right.
Like I don't even understand, like, as a person, why would you do that to somebody? You wouldn't want to get done like that. So that was all I was going to say with that. It's just like, how could you look a man in the face knowing that he doesn't even have a shot? All these people who interviewed Brian Flores knowing he didn't have a shot. That's messed up.
Yeah. And let me say this. This is the reason why, one of the integral things that Dr. Welsing and Neely Fuller said is that if you do not understand racism, what it is and how it works, everything else will confuse you. Everything else you know and think about will confuse you. And as a result of that, when we look at this system, we like football. We played a game, we played it, we've enjoyed it all of our lives. We want to think that there's equity in this because there was equity out there in the schoolyard. There was equity on the football team. There was equity in the locker room. We saw that, but we don't see it from a business standpoint because historically in America, we have been labor. We are labor. This is still a labor. I don't care if you make millions of dollars, we're still labor. Running the show, shoot, you talking about coaching and GM, shoot, we barely got black quarterbacks on the team, which is a leadership position. I don't care who you are, star, 90% of all the MVPs of the Super Bowl have been quarterbacks, even if they didn't have a good game. The leadership has always been circumspect, and it's one reason and one reason alone, and it's because the NFL exists in America and exists in America that is still a racial America that still falls heir to white supremacy racism. As simple as that. So the NFL reflects that. So does UPS. So does FedEx. So does Amazon. So does Walmart. So does all these other corporations out here. This is just another corporation, just happen to be in a game we love, that reflects what America is projecting. America is projecting white supremacy, racism, and until America deals with that, every piece of America is going to have that same reflection, including the NFL, NBA, because they ain't no better.
Right. Hey,
I mean,
Mike,
come on, look at it a little better. A little better is the NBA. A little better. And we got more brothers doing that than we got in the NFL.
Right.
The NFL, the NBA don't even look like it's got nothing but brothers in it. 90% probably. 89, I think it's 89.
One of the things that we have to look at as well, and we talked about this before, is that owners hire people who they feel comfortable with because they're guiding billion-dollar industries. There's only one black owner in 3 majority sports, and that's Michael Jordan. And so when you look at all of the owners in the NFL, some are minorities, but they're not black. You look at the NBA, you only got Michael Jordan. Major League Baseball, none are black. So when you look at this, and when you think about, is it truly racism? Wherever we go, we have to always prove ourselves. We gave him the job, or we got to get this, but you look at some of these coaches that come from the Belichick tree. Joe Judge was fired in these 9 coaches that got fired. He's already back with a job with the Patriots as one of the offensive coordinators. That stuff makes you wonder, because when black folks get fired, it's hard for them to even get back into the league as a special teams coach or even a quality control guy. The tree has been, you get fired, you go back to another spot to be a coordinator to potentially get you another job. That's what white folks do. And you guys were talking about Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin fell into the perfect situation because majority of his coaches have been there for years. He didn't change much when he got there. He's got one coach that's been there, like 19, 20 years?
Yeah.
Got another coach that's been there over almost 20 years or so. So he just fell into a director's role with these guys still in leadership. So much has not changed since we were talking about black coaches coming on and leading. And you think about the guys that were up as being candidates, it's really puzzling how they cannot get a sniff. They can't even get a cup of coffee as a head coach in the NFL. And that's puzzling. But as we said, that happens in corporate America. When I look at my company, I think we got 3,000 employees, maybe 4 black directors. It's the same thing. It's not just happening in the NFL. It's happening all over the place.
Absolutely.
All right, Christian, can I say something?
Oh yeah, we'll go to Christian. We'll go to you. Then we're gonna go to Jay, because Jay got something he want to present to us.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when they fire us, they never replace us with someone who is more qualified, and that has to be looked at. I mean, Flores, they went down. I mean, this guy was an OC, but he never called plays at San Francisco. So you know, he's never even led a room of men before. So how you go from here to down here, that don't make sense. And they always do that to us. They fired Lovie Smith. They went all the way to Canada to get another coach. They didn't go up. They went all the way down. I don't get it.
That could be equated to the Bears.
Got a guy from Canada who had not coached in the NFL since the the Raiders lost that Super Bowl to Tampa, and he was the OC in that game where, when you go back and look at the video, Tampa throughout the game was saying they're running the exact plays and coach said they was going to run. So that was the end of Trestman as an NFL coach, and he ended up I think he did one more season. He got fired, and he ended up in the Canadian League. But hey, let me go to Jay. I know Jay had some stuff he wanted to share with us.
I was just talking about the hiring of the minority coaches or the black coaches in the NFL. The NFL has been around since 1920, and there has been 511 head coaches in the history of the NFL. Y'all hear that? 511 coaches in the NFL from 1920 to 2022, and only not counting Fritz Pollard, there's been 19 African American coaches. So let's look at that number. We're talking about 511 head coaches hired in the NFL. Counting Fritz Pollard, it's only been 20 African American coaches. There is something wrong with that picture. It just, in my opinion, I believe it's one of those things where, it's a mentality that people look at and they say, well, when we was talking about Fritz Pollard last week, it was one of those things where it's like, how can these people don't want to take, or they don't want to take no direction from no black person, or they don't want to do that. But it's not that now. It's just that I just feel, even in corporate America, where there is it's an intimidation. It's an intimidation that they feel from black people, and we can't understand. I can't understand that, because again, all we want is the opportunity, and we should be afforded that opportunity because we are qualified. And as you stated, we have 2 head coaches that's won a Super Bowl. We had some head coaches that was qualified this year to get, as we say, recycled. Why can't the black coaches be recycled like the white coaches are recycled? Josh McDaniels gets another chance. Leslie Frazier, who I think is a darn good head coach, didn't get an opportunity this year. Todd Bowles didn't get an opportunity this year. Byron Leftwich, who's up and coming, he didn't get an opportunity. They say Eric Bieniemy doesn't interview well, so he hasn't gotten the opportunity. I really think the Saints actually just interviewed him to appease the Rooney Rule, because they say his interview was an 8-hour interview. And then they decided, oh, you know what? Dennis Allen is our defensive coordinator, so we just going to hire him. He was already on the staff, just like the Lovey situation. So, the hiring of these black coaches is just criminal, as Bernard said, because the bottom line is they're qualified, and all they ask for is an opportunity, and the opportunity is what they're not getting.
Okay. And don't forget that if you start getting so many interviews as a black coach, that'll go against you.
Yeah.
So let's
say running your credit report too many times.
Right.
Right.
That'll go against you.
You got too many interviews.
You got bad credit.
Something must be wrong.
Everybody agreed that you good, so we can't hire you.
Right.
What?
And that's how racism works in reverse, right? Because if a white candidate was getting that many, he's a hot shot. He's the hot shot candidate. He can pick whatever team he wants. He's deciding among his options. But the black guy must be something wrong. He must interview.
They don't want you, right?
He doesn't present a plan, right?
Right. Which is what they said about Bieniemy. That's what they said about Bieniemy. They say every interview that he's went on, people felt that he doesn't present a plan as far as being a head coach.
In 8 hours? Really?
8 hours.
Right.
You talked to the man for 8 hours
8 hours.
and didn't think he had nothing good to say. Wow.
You know who
Maybe
else?
they was trying to get it out of him.
Austin.
He could have accidentally come up with a plan on that one if he was a stutterer. If he had a stutter, he could have come up with a plan.
They did the same thing
Jay, I
to
want to put
the
what you said
defensive
into
coordinator for the Steelers, who was at Detroit a couple of years ago. His last name Austin. I can't think his first name.
Terry Austin.
That dude.
Terry Austin.
Yeah.
Terry
Yeah.
Austin.
They did the same thing to him. He was on the peak of one of the new hot shot head coordinators that was, about to get a job and whatnot. He started getting too many interviews. Never heard from him again. Never got another opportunity. And that's how they do us.
Okay. Hey, Jay, when you was talking, when you said something to the effect about them being concerned when we're in positions of power. And as you were talking, I thought about Western Illinois, the school that, a couple of us on this broadcast went to. And for maybe a decade, Western had a black president over a black guy that was a president of the university.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that happened while he was over the school was black enrollment increased.
Yep.
And interesting thing is white enrollment decreased. And what was being said was, and I read it in a few articles in Des Moines, some of the people who decided not to go there were saying he was making it into an HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the interesting thing was you're talking about a school that probably averaged maybe in the 80s or whatever, 90s, maybe 800 black students that had went up to, I believe, about a little bit less than 2,000 out of the enrollment started dropping some, but it had been hovering around 9,000 to 10,000. But from that increase in enrollment of black students, the enrollment dropped to the school enrollment. It fell below 8,000 students to a point where there were almost talk of maybe the school might close. But that's neither here or there. But Plank, I would want to, you could bring up some of the names and stuff that, as far as some of the coaches that Jay were referring to. Let me bring that up on the screen for you.
Okay.
Okay, well, I did it not share. Let me go here. Let me go there. Wrong item. Let me see. Head coaches. I think I have to remove that. There we go. And I had to add this to the screen.
Boy, you're going to get that IT certification before it's over, right?
I'm getting right. Okay. So, hold on, let's go here. It looked like it act like it doesn't want to share. Hold on, let me see if it's at the bottom somewhere. Oh, there we go, right there. It still keeps wanting to bring this. Oh, here we go, right here. All right. Can you see that, Plank?
Yeah. Can you increase that?
Hit the on my side.
Control and plus. The control key and then plus, it'll make it a little bit bigger.
Well, okay. Let's try that. Control P.
Yep. Control and plus.
Okay. Plus symbol. Okay. Control.
If you like, I can share it.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll share the screen.
But anyway, as Plank worked through that, I'm gonna remove this one so I won't get confused which one I'm sharing.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Right there.
Okay, so you should be able to see a list of all of the total number of black coaches in NFL history. And hopefully let's make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see that. So we started out with Fritz Pollard, and he was the coach, and he was the quarterback, and he shined the shoes, and he actually served the meals, and he drove the car. He changed horseshoes. He did everything. So that's kind of why he got to be, all kidding aside, he was a very intellectual, articulate man who deserved to be a coach, and he was successful in other areas in his life after his stint in the NFL. The next coach that we had was Art Shell. Everybody remembers, and at least I remember when he was a Raider, and he went from being a dominant Hall of Fame player to being a coach of the Raiders. Dennis Green, Ray Rhodes, Tony Dungy. So we're looking back at the 90s. So these were a lot of the coaches that were getting opportunities. And then it took us into Herman Edwards, who famously said, "You play to win the game." The same way Dennis Green famously said, "They are who we thought they were." Anyway, it took us into another opportunity for us to get other black coaches that were hired, and it wasn't actually surprising at that point. But even in this list, Bernard, one of the things that I wanted to point out, and we can see a number of the coaches here, including Mike Singletary, there are 4 coaches that were on here that only had the title of intern. So if you think about it, somebody gets credit for being a coach for 4 games.
Right.
Most other professions, you don't even get mentioned that you were the manager for 1 week during Christmas holiday because everybody else was drunk. So in this situation, we get them mentioned as the number of that were successful coaches, only because it makes the numbers look that much better. I very quickly ran the numbers when Jay was talking about the number of coaches. So we had 19 out of 511 coaches that have been black. And so what we're looking at is a little less than 4%, 3.72%.
No. 4%, 0.04 of 1%.
Oh my God, that's even worse.
It's less than 1%. I did the math too. That's 0.04 or 0.03 of 1%.
That is pretty
terrible.
That's pretty paltry when you think about it. But so there's a number of coaches that if you actually look at this list, Bernard, all of these coaches on here were very highly hailed. Even when we get down to coaches like Mel Tucker, who's now I think he's at Michigan
State.
Yeah,
and he's still doing well. So they have
who just signed a 10-year, $90 million contract.
So these are qualified men that have histories of being successful, but for whatever reason they get, even the ones that get opportunities, these are short opportunities. If you look at Vance Joseph, he got to be in Denver for a year and a half, a little bit less than that, before they fired him. Same thing with Brian Flores, who's a gentleman that we've been talking about most of the night. Tonight, he ended up having a good winning record, and he still got fired. So I didn't know where else you want me to take this discussion, Bernard, but that's pretty much a summary of where we are with the number of coaches in NFL history.
Yeah, when you look at all of this, though, coming from the less than 1%, the NFL, instead of being a National Football League, it should be called Negroes Forget About Leading. That's what the NFL is called from now on. Negroes Forget About Leading. That's what it's called.
I got you. You would not be wrong,
man.
That's terrible.
It would be remiss to not mention, what one of the videos that I shared on the Bears Banter page, and I think Marcellus, what's his name, Wiley, had spoken to, and he was one of the opponents of the Rooney Rule years ago. He spoke about it recently, that he was not a believer that the Rooney Rule would be successful, and people called him a sellout because of that, because they thought that you were just trying to say that you don't want this to happen because the whole sellout conversation. But what he said was so integral. You are addressing hiring practices, but you don't address. It's like saying I'm addressing your ability to wear a suit or some clothing, but I'm not going to address the distribution or the ownership or the production component to that. He made a very valid point. We don't have ownership. You addressed management. People gonna hire who they want to hire.
Right.
Like he said, my company exists of everybody look like me. My mama, my cousin, my brother, my sister. My business and my company, all the people that have been through here reflect me. No matter who walks into my place to use it, everybody who runs it looks like me. You didn't address ownership. That could have been controlled. You can't control who somebody hires, but you can control the franchise and who you put and allow people to have franchises in, and that has never been addressed. And then, because if nothing else, this is what I think would have looked like. You got a black ownership team. It's going to look like black folks that run that team. They win and get successful. They do well. What's going to happen? Their employees are going to get opportunities to run leagues and run teams all over the league because, flattery, imitation is the best form of flattery. So they're going to, hey, let's get those guys over here. They've done a great job. We can't have them continually beating us like this. I.e. the Negro League.
If you can't beat them, join them.
The Negro League. They couldn't beat the Major League Baseball was getting their butt whipped by the Negro League's All-Star. So they had to break that up because it was getting embarrassing. It was getting embarrassing. Josh Gibson, they say he has so many home runs in the season. They don't even know how many. They can't even count. 70, 80, 90 home runs in the season. It was embarrassing. So the opportunity came, but only where on the labor level. This is why this book is so important. Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. It's all about we will only exist in their world in a labor capacity. That's it. Everything else we want, we desire,
Hey, you mentioned Dr. Claude Anderson. You mentioned a lot of great points. I do want to point this out for Black History Month as far as Dr. Claude Anderson. I did not know that his family owned one of the only black transportation bus companies in the 1960s in the United States. I believe they were out of South Carolina. Is that right? I believe it was out of, but they had their own busing company. And of course, as integration went on, right, the company ended up folding. I can't recall what the name of the company that Dr. Claude Anderson family owned, but they definitely had their own busing company, like I believe it was in South Carolina. But as far as get back to here, that definitely what it is ownership. But as like right now we have the Denver Broncos up for sale. And there are different people putting bids together, putting financial teams together to try to bid. I know Byron Allen, who actually owns a lot of TV streaming services. He has a team that he put together. Jay-Z has one, and John Elway has one. And we're going to bring up John Elway's name a little bit later on. How everybody think that bidding process is going to go? Because
Robert Smith too. Robert Smith is they look at billionaire Robert Smith is putting together a team.
Yes, Robert Smith, who used to own what was the Soft Sheen, right? Was it Soft Sheen?
Robert Smith. No. He's a billionaire that owns
Robert Johnson.
What did I say? Robert. I said Robert.
You said Smith. Yeah, you meant Johnson, right?
Yeah, Bob Johnson. My bad, Bob Johnson.
Correct.
Yeah, he used to own
what?
Charlotte team.
The Charlotte team. Yeah, he owned the Charlotte
team. Yeah.
Charlotte team.
That's the one that gave the that paid the tuition, all the back bills of all the Morehouse students when he spoke there about 2 years ago. So your bill is paid.
Yeah.
So he would be a good owner. I think he would be great because I think he believes in equity.
And we would see opportunity. He didn't come to Mississippi Valley and do that when I was graduating.
Did y'all invite him to speak?
He knew where it is. He knew where it was. You just can't go to one HBCU.
Let's stray from this topic for a minute. I wanted to ask y'all this early on, and if y'all could give a brief synopsis. It's the three gentlemen at the bottom. What HBCU did you go to, and what was your experience as far as attending the HBCU? If you could give like a brief synopsis of that, because I know that was part of our conversation last week is HBC. We'll start with you, Jay.
Yeah, make me feel like I was there with you, bro.
Right. Hey.
There you go.
I attended Alcorn State University from 1987 to 1989. And coming from me being the first person in my family to go to college, it was one of the greatest experiences I ever seen. I had never been around because throughout my entire educational career, grammar school and high school, I went to mixed schools. So and just to see that many Black people at one school, it was one of the most incredible things I had seen. And I didn't even know the history of HBCUs. I just went to a HBCU to play football. I didn't know the history and all that. Now I can't say that my grandfather did attend Alcorn State University, but that was something that wasn't never really talked about. But the experience, oh my God, it was one of the greatest things. And had I not got injured playing football, I probably would have just stayed there. But I did just want to come home because I was down there. To me, as far as I'm concerned, when I look at it now as a 52-year-old person, I was down there now without a purpose because I went there for a purpose. So I wound up coming home, going to Western, which was a culture shock, leaving Alcorn State, coming to Western Illinois in college. It was a culture shock, but one of the greatest experiences I ever had. One of the greatest experiences I ever had going to HBCU.
Okay. Hey, Mike, what was your experience? What HBCU you went to, and what was your experience?
Well, I had the esteemed opportunity to go to Mississippi Valley State University, accredited in 1950 by James Herbert White and all the state legislators of the state of Mississippi. That's where I went to.
Salute.
And you talk about you talking about taking a kid from Chicago and going down south, where you had nurturing of the student body by the professors that were there. You had some esteemed Black professors who just didn't accept mediocrity from the student body.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends who I still talk to this day were people that I went to college with. The experience of a HBCU it beats for a Black student. It beats any other thing that you can experience in life. You wake up and you're around your own people. And so what's crazy about that is that these predominantly white institutions, you have a Black student union. Well, at a HBCU, the whole school is the Black student union.
Right.
And it's totally different. I actually played football and baseball down in Mississippi Valley. My coaches were very involved in my life. And it's just, I just, if I was sitting there selling something, I'd be selling HBCUs. Most of my friends that went to predominantly white universities, most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them said I should have gone to a HBCU. So that's my take.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Brother Tyler, same question.
Yeah. I went to the Alabama State University, founded in 1867.
So
at
we was
Alabama
all in-
Normal College. So you started it.
So we was all in the SWAC. So we was all in the SWAC then.
But you know what? My
We
first
was all in the SWAC.
acceptance letter to an HBCU was Alcorn State. And I didn't know from hell to high water where Norman, Mississippi was. So ain't nowhere in the world. I looked at that like, Mississippi, Norman, Mississippi. So when I ended up going, I ended up spending the year at PWI, and then I went on down to Alabama State, close to where my brother was at Tuskegee. We had a legacy in our family of HBCUs, Morehouse, Central State, what else? Just Florida State, Florida A&M, my uncle. We had a bit of a legacy there, and I was very grateful to be able to be in that environment. I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I will say that it was probably the single most just learned experience of everything. I mean, I learned more about us on good and bad. I learned about just the I think Jay mentioned about the way that they took care of us. I mean, it was a family environment. Mm-hmm. I was invited home during Thanksgiving when I couldn't travel to Chicago by one of my instructors, invited me to have Thanksgiving dinner with her and her husband. I should have done it because he was a big time car dealership owner. And but I remember that experience. I was like, wow, like where they do that at, So it was a very lovely, family, wholesome experience that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, And currently we're being coached by Eddie Robinson, not a child of Eddie Robinson Grambling, but the former player that played for Tennessee Titans and went to the Super Bowl, could have been a Super Bowl champion, 1 yard.
short.
Could have been a Super Bowl champion, but he is now, and I'm loving that trend too. That's happening in the HBCUs where these guys are coming home.
Yeah.
And these are pro ball players that are coming home. I want to see Jerry Rice do something with Mississippi Valley. I would love to see that.
He's not
Hey, you
coming
know
back.
what? A point of information: when I say busing company, when I mention Dr. Clyde Anderson, I don't mean like the yellow bus. I mean the public bus where people pay fares to get on. The name of the bus company was called Safe Bus Company, and it was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they started it in 1926, and it lasted to 1972. So this is a little Black history fact. Hey, Mike.
All right.
Don't leave me out.
Christian went to HBCU
Miles.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Hold on, Christian. What
Hey, yeah, you can't let us get away with that one, bro. Come on.
Miles College, Birmingham, Alabama. Been there. I loved it, man. Black excellence. Like, I loved it. It was a block party every day, literally. It was just fun, just being able to just be around, you know, men and women that are the same skin color as me, and we just trying to just get our education on and succeed in life. And it was just fun, just the classics, going to other HBCUs, and it wasn't like no beef. We was always embraced. If you went to ASU, if you went to Talladega, which I did a couple of times, if you went to Alabama State, it was nothing. You came with your apparel, and everybody just embraced you. You know, it was just great for me. I would always tell anybody, go to HBCU. Not only will you get a good education, but you're gonna also just have a great time as well.
Okay, and yeah, I'm gonna do a correction that the percentage of coaches, Black coaches, that's been since the inception of the NFL is 3.72% of the coaches. So that is the number.
That is correct. All right, my bad.
And so, hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
One of the things you do in your career, you know, as far as just a little extra dollars, you know, for Benjamins. It's supposed to be Harriet Tubman's, right? I think it was 2020. It's supposed to be Harriet Tubman's, but that ain't happened. For those unfamiliar, that there was something. There was a President Obama had said I can't remember what exact bill was, but they was gonna make them Harriet Tubman's.
It was a $20 bill
picture in place.
I believe it was a $20 bill.
So $20 bills. Okay.
When that's supposed to happen in 2020?
I think it's supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen in 2020. Then Trump stopped it. So anyway, in reference to Mike, you know, you're not gonna be able to put no Harriet Tubman's in your pocket, but as reference to the extra money Mike does refereeing. And what is your experience as far as being a ref, being Black, and what do you see as far as Black referees in the NFL?
Well, it's almost a similar thing as far as in the as far as how Black head coaches, because it's always harder for us. You know, they don't really define what the expectation is, so that way they can keep us kind of out. I've had the opportunity here. I was on the second all-Black crew to ever do the state finals here in Illinois, and it's just always interesting because our crew, when we went into it, we knew there was going to be some kind of Black backlash or blacklash for us, because we were all Black, and we've always defined ourselves as being an all-Black crew. There's been times where members on our crew in the playoffs couldn't make the games or whatever, and the state will call me and say, hey, we're going to send you this guy. I said, no. We're going to take this guy, because it's important for them to see all Blacks on a game. It's wherever we go. We had a guy, we went to Marist one time, right here on 115th and Pulaski in Chicago, and it was a Black assistant coach, and he came up to us before the game, and the brother was in tears. He said, I've never, ever seen 5 Black guys on one game at one time. I've seen 1 or 2. I've seen sprinkled in maybe 3, but I've never seen 5 all together. And when we finished working the game, he came up to us again and said, "Man, you guys are the best guys I've ever seen work a football game." Not to the fact that we're just black, but like I said, it's important for us to keep that consciousness in people's head. We go to all these Catholic schools, from St. Rita to Mount Carmel, Loyola, and all of that. And now it's gotten to the point where they rather see us than see some of their own people of their own race doing their games. And that's one thing that I'm proud of. Even in baseball, it's just so much harder for us because, and then when you get there, when you get to a championship game, white folks say, "Hey, you only got there because you're black," and they needed to put somebody black on there. So they always kind of try to discredit our credentials, and it's just it's appeasing to me to see how they do us, because I'm better than you. You ain't got to say I only got there because I was black and they needed the Rooney rule, and things like that. So you see this transgression amongst our people, and I think right now the state of mind that people are in, and we're talking about 2022.
Right.
That's not the 60s.
Right.
So one of my buddies who came and was the keynote speaker at our first football camp is Sean Smith. Sean Smith is a white hat in the NFL, but the road to get there was a hard road. And when he first got there, they put him on Jacksonville versus Miami and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Now, majority of the big games that you see now, he's on those games. And I'm proud of the fact he's also the director of diversity for the Big Ten and minority officials. So we have some things that's moving, but it's not enough.
Okay. Hey, I'd like to thank everybody who's watching us tonight on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch TV. On Bears Banter, this month, we're doing a full-part series on racism in the NFL. Part 1, which was last week, was banning of black players. Part 2 tonight is hiring practices for black coaches, GMs, and refs. Hey, in 1989, Art Shell was he coached his first NFL game as a head coach. That same night, the first black referee ref that game. Mike, do you know currently in 2020 how many black referees are in the NFL?
When you talk about a total, I think it's a total of maybe it's 16 crews total, 8 guys on each crew. But I think the numbers would surprise you, because the NFL, the actual NFL, is moving towards diversity. So now you're starting to see more women on the games. We do have a female that's refereeing in the Super Bowl. They're making this whole big push as far as bringing in women and minorities. But I think the number is probably around, minority-wise, maybe 30 to 35. So we have a good stake in numbers. You'll be surprised. We have a big stake in the numbers. Matter of fact, one of the NFL refs, Mike Banks, is from right here in Chicago.
Okay.
Or the Chicagoland area. He live out there towards you.
Okay. Hey, so we're gonna show a little clip from last week, and then we're gonna jump into the Brian Flores lawsuit. I'm sorry, I should mention these black GMs. Come on, let me pull this up real quick. The black GMs that are in the game. Let me go to that. So currently in 2022, there actually are. Let me put this right here. We have 7 black general managers in the NFL. Those managers are Chris Carter from the Dolphins. He was hired in 2016. The Browns have Andrew Berry, who was hired in 2020. The Lions have Brad Holmes, who was hired in 2021. Falcons, I think that's Terry, what's that, Fontenot? Okay, 2021. Washington have Martin Mayhem, 2021. The Bears hired Ryan Poles, 2022. And the Vikings just hired Kwanzaa Adolfo. Is that it?
Kwesi Adolfo.
Okay. So he was just hired in 2020. I didn't put his his credentials there. But hey, let's go to this slide from last week.
Color barrier in baseball in 1947. But did you know this was the second time that the National Baseball League included black players? John Bud Fowler is credited by some with being the first black man to play organized white baseball in 1878. Others included Moses Fleetwood Walker, Frank Grant, and George Stovey, to name a few. But in 1887, the league voted to formally ban any additional signing of black players. The NFL, like baseball, included black players almost from its inception. The NFL was founded in 1920. From 1920 to 1933, there were approximately 12 to 13 black NFL players, including Fritz Pollard, the first black player coach. But in 1933, the league entered into a gentleman's agreement among NFL ownership not to recruit black players. Unlike baseball, this was not a formal ban, and it was often, and still is often, denied as ever even having occurred, with many including our very own Papa Bear George Hallis saying that perhaps there were not enough talented black college players available to recruit, or simply the game did not have appeal to black players at the time. The ban lasted until 1946. Kenny Washington, Woody Strode, Marion Motley, and Bill Willis, referred to as the Forgotten Four, were the first to reintegrate football. Why is this never talked about?
Okay, so I just want to bring us up to speed for those who missed last week's show. So with that said, let's talk about Brian Flores' lawsuit. On February 1st, Brian Flores filed a lawsuit against the NFL, all 32 teams, the Denver Broncos specifically, the New York Giants, and the Miami Dolphins. In a nutshell, the Broncos interview was in 2019, which he said was just a sham, just so they could check the box for the Rooney Rule. One of the examples he stated was the fact that John Elway, which I said was, as I mentioned again, because John Elway is one of the people who has a bid in for the Broncos. He claimed that John Elway and some of the other people came to the interview an hour late, and they appeared to be intoxicated. The other lawsuit is against the Giants. He said that was just to check the box rule as well. The thing about the Giants was he got a text message for Bill Belichick of the Patriots congratulating him that he was going to get the job, to only find out that he was actually trying to text the other Brian. Not the black Brian.
White Brian.
Yeah, I say how you can get that
Brian
mixed up on your phone.
Right. So
got to be more careful.
So that was some of what kind of got him more upset, that he actually was going to an interview that he felt he had no opportunity to get the job. And then the lawsuit against the Dolphins is he alleges that the Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, offered him $100,000 for each game that he lost in the 2019 season so he can improve their draft position in 2020. And the NFL, he's suing them because he said the NFL that's discriminated against black coaches in the Rooney Rule is not working. So that's just a nutshell. The lawsuits themselves are much longer than this, but this will give us at least a working point to start from. So, I mean, is this a valid lawsuit? Oh, okay. Christian said his sound went out. He couldn't hear what we were saying. Okay.
Yeah, he exited. He's going to come back in.
Come back in. Okay. So, in reference to this lawsuit, do we think it's going to go anywhere? It do look like he probably may end up being the sacrificial lamb in this situation, kind of like Kaepernick was as far as quarterback him being banned, even though the NFL tried to deny it, he wasn't banned. And so they kind of gave him this, as far as capping it, they gave him like a sham workout. What was that? Was that last year? I can't remember. The years are merging together.
It was 2019, I believe.
Where nobody showed up and they changed the location of the venue.
They changed the location of the venue.
Cap was about 75 for that workout anyway. Now
he can still beat most of these guys today.
Yeah. so
I think the lawsuit. Go ahead.
Oh, so in reference to that, in comparison to this, he will probably get in. I'm a comparison. Maybe he gets some kind of fake interview still going forward. I don't know, but what do y'all think about this lawsuit? Hey, Plank, get at it.
Let's let Jay go.
Oh, Jay?
I think the same thing is going to happen, like with the Kaepernick situation. The NFL is probably going to wind up settling with him just to make this go away, which is what they did with the Colin Kaepernick thing. I don't, like I stated earlier, I think he's going to wind up being, not coaching in the NFL again. But I do think what's going to happen is the NFL is going to try to settle this and make it go away.
Okay.
I don't think it can go away now with him bringing this lawsuit, because the lawsuit is based on discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think, and like I said, my perception of Roger Goodell before is totally different than it is now, because I used to watch the podcast with I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall. And he used to always talk about Roger Goodell has his open door policy where you could bring in things to talk to him about it. And I was like, man, Brandon Marshall's nuts. You can't talk to Roger Goodell. And he said, no, he used to talk about, he calls him Uncle Roger. He says, Uncle Roger will sit there and listen to you. And I'm like, no, he won't. But like I said, it's interesting because like I said earlier in the broadcast, Roger Goodell is welcoming this lawsuit because he wants to get this stuff out in the open to uncover, because I think this is going to hurt the brand of the NFL. Just one more point before we jump to the next person, because we keep bringing up Kaepernick. Did you guys know that Jackie Robinson never stood for the national anthem? Never. And nothing was done on the basis of this towards Jackie Robinson.
Wow.
The floor is yours.
Okay.
Relative to Kaepernick, a couple quick things. Kaepernick was one of the first quarterback to actually make that RPO, run pass option, be effective at the NFL level, which was something they didn't think would be effective. Also, let's not forget, Colin Kaepernick was drafted in 2011. He would only be in his 11th year. I know that sounds like this was so long ago, but this man is still in shape and he still has the ability to play football if he wanted to. If you're talking about Tom Brady for 20 years, other quarterbacks being 10-year vets, there's no reason I think that Colin Kaepernick couldn't still play, especially because he hasn't taken a wear and tear on his body over the years. That said, I don't think that Brian Flores is going to get another opportunity because he's got too high of a profile, and then a whole lot of people would have to admit that there was racism and that they were wrong. That's my assessment.
Okay. Now, in reference to this, what was just said, okay, Roger Goodell actually works for the owners.
Mm-hmm.
He does.
Okay. So how do you pressure the owners to have more fair hiring practices?
Well,
this is the difficult part about it. Well, go ahead, Plank.
But his job, even though he works for the owners, Roger Goodell's job is to protect the shield. So in many ways, he's the policeman that's hired to protect the owners from themselves. Now, has he been able to do it to the level that you would expect? Probably not. But that is still his job. That's why he's had a couple opportunities where he fined the Patriots for unfair practices and took away draft choices from some other teams and things of that nature. So he still has some control because he has to have the owners accountable for what's going on from the overall NFL, not just individual teams. And they're not really used to having that level of censorship, if you will, and that's why there's a lot of pushback from the owners going towards Roger Goodell.
Okay. Hey, brother Tyler, I was just thinking as Plank was talking, the NBA had a similar issue with the LA Clippers, where the owner was a notoriously known for racist stuff and among other
Donald
things.
Sterling, yes.
Donald Sterling. And the NBA actually did a disservice to him and made him sell a team. He made more money.
Disservice.
Get out of here, man.
Y'all ever heard of Mars Shot?
Yes.
Mars Shot, Cincinnati Reds.
Cincinnati Reds.
Same way.
Yes.
They got rid of her too.
So what's the difference here, brother Tyler?
But see, it's almost, you can go look at George Steinbrenner and some of the stuff practices there. If you don't, the big issue is where your monetary and your money is coming from. You know that this goes into a money issue. And so, of course, they've priced, in most cases, season tickets to a degree where there's a minimal amount of Black people with season tickets, even in cities such as DC and Atlanta, where we do have a lot of attendees for the games. But season tickets and though that's where money comes into the equation. So when we're looking at, and then the other thing is crime and punishment. Everybody on here, I'm assuming, if not everybody, most of y'all are parents. And if you don't have the ability to punish your children for a offense that the child did, then you have no power. One of the challenges with Colin Kaepernick, we pulled back, we stopped watching, but that really wasn't the major thing, because most of us who, like Bernard, you stopped watching football. You mentioned that, but did you have the NFL package?
No, I didn't.
How many people like you had the NFL package? Did you have season tickets? So when those things like that are impacted, again, I'm going to respond to people who spend money with me. You want to see change. You walking in my place one day talking about, I don't like the way this looks, that way that looks. I'm like, well, you can leave. And if you do leave and there's no consequences to your absence that affects my business, then I'm not going to make any changes that you bring up in it. So in essence, if your child does something and you can't punish them, now, if we had been able to indoctrinate these players and some of the real good ones and walk off the field, and you saw NFL players walking off the field and saying, you know what, Cap, we got you, dog. We know this is about police brutality and the way Black people are treated. We understand that. But to take you out of a job because of that, if 10 players on every team walked out, the impact that would have had. You make $1 million a year. You mean you tell me you can't manage being a season without a salary?
Right.
Where is the mentorship necessary for that to happen? So that there's got to be a punishment that they feel if we step away from the game.
So, Christian,
they got to feel that.
What kind of punishment can they execute on these owners? I mean, is it anything?
It has to be a real holdout. It can't be what the NBA did and then 2 weeks later they came back and played. It has to be what the brother said. 10 players, the good ones, we're not gonna play. Then you'll see a difference then. I agree to that.
Okay.
In the NBA,
or the best player in the league.
Let me just say this.
Even with Kaepernick, Neil, what'd you get? Jenkins and maybe 4 or 5 other players. I mean, you could even, other than when they had the thing when Trump said something, you could even get most of the Black players to even just do an easy gesture as kneeling.
They stopped doing it. They started punishing them, and they took that away. They said, I got to feed my family. I make $17 million a year. How I'm going to feed my family on $17 million a year?
What is your family?
He threatened Jerry Jones actually threatened some of the players out. You know, he's one of the owners that actually came public that he was going to cut some players if they. And a couple of teams, what they did was they actually did cut some insignificant players.
That's the word, insignificant players.
Right.
Insignificant players.
What was the incident that happened that made all the owners take a kneel after they said they players gotta show respect during the national anthem? Because
it was a statement that Donald Trump made.
Right.
It was,
but it affected the shield. It affected their brand. It affected their money. That's the only reason why they did that. So if you took like the best player, like Tom Brady, for example, and he came out and said, "I'm not playing," the NFL gonna have a huge problem because ain't nobody gonna watch.
Because sponsorships, more importantly, is where the real money is made. Is not on your season ticket. That has an impact, but sponsorship.
Yep.
You know, $30 million, brother. You know what kind of money these commercials are going for on Sunday? Wow, the NFL about to make bank.
The TV views too. Sunday. They make so much money from Fox.
They make a lot of money, but when they selling these spots, $30-40 million for 30 seconds, it's incredible. So when you think about punishing somebody, and you can't impact, we can, but reality is that we just have to understand unity. If there's unity, let's say when everything was happening, even last year with George Floyd, let's say with all of the stuff that the players putting stuff on their back, they could put any name they want, the NFL players, the football players, the basketball players. Let's say LeBron James said, you know what? I ain't playing in this doggone. I ain't doing it.
I guarantee
you. LeBron said, now they would follow LeBron because LeBron has that kind of impact on players where, you know, his team would have stepped and said, you know what? We're going to do this too. And collectively, I've been on the end of punishment in a collegiate environment. And I'm telling you,
Brother Tyler,
when I looked around and wasn't nobody behind me, I knew I was going down.
Let me interject this because I don't want to not give that brother credit. LeBron James did tell the NBA players to not play. Former President Obama reached out to him and discouraged him, and he kind of, out of respect,
acquiesced.
Correct. He backtracked on it. But LeBron did actually. I have to give LeBron credit as.
But is that real though, Brother Bernard?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I think so.
If you really been disrespected, I don't care who you are. You sticking to your guns. I don't care what race you are. If somebody disrespect you, and you feel like you went to the ultimate to disrespect me to the ultimate level, you gonna stand your ground. You gonna be like, nah. So I think
one of the things that happened. Let me jump in. One of the things that happened during that same period of time, what you guys are talking about, when the incident happened with George Floyd, LeBron James shut the NBA down. He said, we're not playing until something happens. You had the guys in Milwaukee stop playing first, but then when they had that players meeting, LeBron said, we're not playing. And some of the guys like, wait, man, he said, we're not playing. And when that's the difference with the NBA and the NFL. There's no black leadership in the NFL to even say that. And what we were talking about earlier, as far as guys, when Cap is kneeling and they's like, man, you guys better play and all this other stuff, there was no leadership. You had guys talking about, man, I gotta feed my family, man. I would kneel with you. I know what the movement's about, brother, but I can't kneel because it's gonna cost me so much money. There's no leadership. But see, that I believe they knew what the movement was about, but they didn't want to be the movement. Because, and I'm not the biggest LeBron James fan, but when that brother talks in the NBA, everybody around him listens. And when he said we're not playing, and he's gotten a couple of guys together to take several stances on racial equality and things of that nature. But
Trayvon Martin, right?
Yeah, it's just to the fact where when he talks, they listen because they need him. And so we don't. I mean, who would that guy be in the NFL?
Right.
Who would he be?
But the only problem with LeBron James is, and this is one of the things that the quote unquote conscious community has to be more responsible for, is how we integrate and remember, Spike Lee used to have this class for NBA players. When you come in, black players, he would had it arranged with the NBA for them to come and speak with him, so he could talk to them about some of the things they're going to be facing and running into. And a lot of these players, you know, they come from very urban situations, from very degraded situations. They don't really have any, you know, even LeBron. I mean, for LeBron to be where he is now, consciously, it's amazing because he didn't come from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he came from a 17-year-old mother, you know, no father in the house. So he came from a real rough situation where basketball was literally probably his only way out. And when you start to matriculate in growth in how you think and your consciousness, you have got to get scholarship behind that. And I think the challenge is that, and this is what I saw when I saw things fizzle, when he was speaking on those issues, and not to turn it to an NBA thing versus NFL. But what I saw was that the scholarship behind it wasn't rooted. See, you can't have a leadership component that's racism and white supremacy, which is systemic, and you got athletes running it. You got to defer. You got to defer. I'm not saying anything against that. They don't have a voice. Jim Brown had a voice. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had a voice. You know, we can go back to all those athletes and entertainers, but until you have transferred that over to your scholastic community, to your economic, to your economists, to your politicists, to your clergy, to those individuals that form a leadership component, they're not going to take. This is why Donald Trump met with who? Did he meet with Minister Farrakhan? Did he meet with Claude Anderson? Who did he meet with? He met with a bunch of damn comedians,
Right.
and athletes. And what is that? How is that going to have an impact on our community unless we're a bunch of damn comedians and athletes? That don't make no damn sense.
Right.
Can I say something? My whole premise about the LeBron thing, I get where y'all coming from, but for me, I look at change what Ali did. When you put yourself and say, nah, this needs to be done, and you lose something and change happen, that's what I look for. So I get all of that, but Ali took a stand and lost what a third of his career.
Yeah.
For
well, he lost his prime years, you know.
In his
more importantly, he lost the prime.
So when I look at LeBron in this situation, I'm not gonna ever count nobody's money. But was it really a change? What's 2 weeks in the NBA for NBA players in this society? What's 2 weeks? You talking about we missed the season. Then I'm gonna look and say, all right, they really about this life. But when you only miss 2 weeks, and because that's all we've been doing for decades, centuries, is talking. We talk a lot. We have so many conclaves and things like that. We talk, but when it comes down to action, to doing something like Ali did, to doing what Colin Kaepernick did, we haven't seen no big time player do that in any sport besides boxing. Ali did that. And
So you know, that's a great point, and I don't want to dismiss Kaepernick, because when we look at what he did, maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever the time frame may be, I think in some of that, not as far as he was not as great in the sport as Muhammad Ali was to boxing, but I think the sacrifice he made is going to be in that, in my opinion, that same conversation, because what happened to him, at least at this point, he didn't get another opportunity to play. Like Ali at least eventually got an opportunity to at least finish up his career. But when we talk about racism and leadership in the NFL, we're going to try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so, is how do you affect racism in a business like this where they're making their money regardless of what you, I, or anybody on here think about it? Jake accounts his season tickets and somebody else gonna scoop them tickets up, and then they're not gonna miss a beat. But one of the things is maybe it is the brand. You know, how do you tarnish the brand? And the hardest part about when you talk about racism in the professional sports, and particularly football, is us, the average person, still see them as we're fighting for millionaires, right? We're fighting for millionaires who don't even want to fight for themselves.
Exactly.
I mean, look at a lot of the pro sports, and when they have their collective bargaining agreement, who is the first sport that's going to cave in? The NFL. The NFL is going to be the first set of players that cave in. And I know a lot of it is because of how the salaries are structured and all that. But in essence, that becomes part of the problem when the person is not fighting themselves.
That's
and
true.
They need the outside people to fight for them, but they're not even acknowledging that they think it's a problem. And that's why I'm happy to see people like Hugh Jackson, who was a former coach in the NFL, actually come out and support Brian Flores. And Mike sent me this video of him. And I believe there's other NFL coaches that are joining in because it's supposed to be a class action lawsuit that's joining in on this lawsuit. So we hope that something positive come out of this. I mean, anybody else got anything to say about the lawsuit or racism in the NFL? Because I know next week we got the black quarterbacks and things like that. And then we got black activism as the fourth segment.
What I appreciate about Hugh Jackson is that, first of all, he corroborates what Flores was saying about incentivizing losing. We know that it happens. And they're not the first to do it. We know the Clippers did that for years. The Lions probably did it for years. I hope they did it. I hope they just wasn't that bad. But when it jeopardizes your ability to work in your capacity and to find other employment after that, yeah, you incentivize them to lose, and then you don't give another opportunity to, that's valid in that same avenue. And it goes like, wow, Hugh got a second chance with the Browns, and they were like horrible.
They was just as bad.
They were horrible, but they had the first pick. How many years in a row? About 2-3 years in a row.
Yeah,
they had the first pick in the draft, trying to build from draft equity. The NFL, I think the NFL, that would change a little bit if obviously the NFL took and adopted a lottery system like the NBA. Then you would see it would not be to your advantage to necessarily lose every game and to bottom out to get a first round draft pick, because that's still that's archaic if you ask me. Because if you just go into a pool, you go like, man, I could get the pool and still win some games and win and look decent. But I think that this lawsuit is going to be interesting. I don't know how much change is going to really invigorate. I think what it will do for us as fans is open our eyes a little bit more to the impact that we can have collectively, but we can't do it collectively. It's funny because the book Black Power, Labor, White Wealth, that's exactly what Dr. Anderson talks about, is how we can utilize sports as a means to collectively improve our economic station because of the fact that we have dominated in these areas.
Okay.
We didn't found them, but we dominated.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Jay, I had a question since you mentioned brand. Last week, we played a clip from Jay-Z, and Jay-Z had said basically the time for kneeling is over. It's time for an action plan. And I still criticize, I don't know what action plan he had other than walking out with a contract for himself for halftime entertainment. Right. But my question to you, Jay, in reference to that, as far as affecting the brand, one of the things that was happening affecting the brand was it wasn't not only black artists, but white artists were pulling out of the NFL Super Bowl. And they had a hard time booking some quality acts. Do you think that now this year they got hip hop and all that and, et cetera? Did you think we kind of cave in and let them help rebuild their brand back?
Well, it all depends on when you say we. Who is we? Did we cave in as
No,
fans?
Jay-Z. I'm using Jay-Z in particular because he
You
kind
know,
of gave
yeah,
the
he
green light
did.
to entertainers.
Well, I'm not gonna say they came in because the bottom line is you still talking about money. And like I mentioned prior to the broadcast we got on, Mary J is the only person that's not getting paid for this halftime show. But you know, it's one of those things where they got this Super Bowl is set up for the NFL. I don't know if y'all seen the ticket prices for this game.
Yes.
But the cheapest ticket,
It's like $33,000, right?
Is like $45,000 to $5,000. So you know,
that's different, though, Jay.
SoFi Stadium, LA. You know, they want to get the LA grown. They want to get the LA grown talent. So they got everybody that's performing on this show outside of Eminem, who's from Detroit, but he's connected to Dr. Dre, who's all the West Coast thing. So did they cave in? No, because the bottom line is still people want to get paid and they want the exposure. So no, they didn't cave in. It's just it is what it is. It's just like trying to say we boycotting the NFL. Well, who is we boycotting the NFL?
That's
you know,
true.
and so the bottom line is the NFL with the NFL is a big entity, and it's bigger than what a lot of people think it is. It's just bigger.
Okay.
It's king. The NFL is king, and it's the truth. It's the God's honest truth. The NFL is king.
Okay.
They said them tickets
I'd
were
like
so
to
high.
thank everyone who watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch TV. Hey, y'all got any closing remarks? Mike, it sounded like I was hearing you saying
I was
something.
going to say Mike was saying something.
Yeah, I was about to say, Jay, the tickets are so high because they said the Bengals fans should have been saving their money since the last time they had been there. So they still have enough.
The rate of inflation, boy.
Yeah, a $1 a year, you can get a seat. You know what I'm saying?
You wrong for that. You wrong for that.
Hey, I seen where parking was up to like $5,000 for parking.
Hey,
Man, listen.
And
there are
so
going to be
people are man, if I had a house around there, you know what? You could park in front of my house and I for about $2,000 and I'll drive you right back over there to the stadium.
Hey, you can Airbnb my house. I'd be
right. There are going to be no ordinary folk at SoFi Stadium Sunday night.
It will. It'll be the Bengals fans who have saved their money and put it into a pot for the next time they ever. What, they ain't been there since what, 89?
89. That's a stretch.
Like 89. It might have been 89.
Man, you talking about people in spending their whole.
It was versus the Rams.
They 401k plan.
Look,
They bring their 401k plan.
If they saved $100 a year, they could buy a ticket. It's almost like Sally Struthers. You could buy this little kid in Africa for 33 cents a day.
I guess they gonna be sleeping in their cars because trying to get a hotel room or Airbnb.
Christian, they've saved their money up. They got it. They saved it.
It's LA. A bottle of water is like $3.
Hey, it's 89.
Not Sunday. It ain't $3.
Nah, you're right. It's probably gonna be like $10.
It's gonna be $10 Sunday.
Right.
Imagine what the food's gonna be like at that game. I mean, you probably get a slice of pizza. It's gonna be like $25 or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Nutty,
a bottle of water, $8.
I'm bringing the big purse.
Right, you need a chick with a purse.
I'm bringing the big purse. I'm bringing the college purse.
Fried chicken, yeah, and aluminum foil.
Everything all inside of the purse.
LA gonna be so packed this weekend. It's not gonna even be.
I know people going to the game. They're not even going to the game. They going to LA.
Right, they just going to LA.
Yeah,
LA at the time.
They said they got their stuff going on Universal Studios and one of the NFL parties and whatnot.
Well, you know what? Let me say this. It's kind of, I don't know if it's gonna be the mic drop, but like they said in Trading Places, you want to hurt rich people, make them poor people.
Make them poor people.
This is a dollar thing. This is money.
Mm-hmm.
And we have got to understand that as labor, we're not just labor, we are consumers.
Yep.
Yeah.
We
Brother Talib, I'm trying to get the Super Bowl here because I'm going to be running the tour taking people from down near the Bear Stadium to like Madison and Pulaski, 63rd and Halsted. You know, I'm taking them to all the rough neighborhoods so they can see how everybody else lives.
How everybody else
Right,
lives.
hey, I get it too.
Right.
Hey,
You
so
better
next
tell them
week,
in their pockets before they go.
next week, Christian is going to come back. Him and Demarius Hampton is going to come, and they're going to share a little time with us talking about black quarterbacks. You know, of course, all of us going to be back as well. So until next week, peace.